quite often I'm wondering the question of why do I make my art? And that, that transcends just me. It's, I'll be out at an exhibition or walk by a gallery or a museum, and I'm like, why did somebody make that work? Like, I'll be looking on social media and I'll be like, why did somebody create that? Like, what are they trying to do with that? And it's a tough struggle because I don't do art for money. I don't do it for fame. I do it because I can't not do it. I'm just driven to do it. I mean, if I don't have the access to a studio to produce art, I'll be making, building, constructing something else, rebuilding a house, or, refitting, repainting rooms, whatever. I mean, anything I can do to be sort of productive and creative and sort of make something new or different. So the idea of like creating art is just something that's at the core of my being. I can't stop making things, changing things, updating things, whatever it is. So the question of like, why do artists make their work? So as I said, when I walk around and I walk by a gallery, or if I'm looking on social media and I see something, I'm like, why? What was the thing that drove them to make that particular thing? And that not only that, but let's say I'm walking by a gallery and there's a work in the front room, and so like that's the piece that they think is so compelling that they think that it will impact the viewer in some way to draw them in farther. Why did they make that, and why did they choose that one? Oh, choosing the ones to put in exhibitions, that's a whole different topic. But why did they do that? I have no idea. It's a struggle to try and figure all this out. And many times it's like I'll look through, or I'll be watching, reading, listening to whatever, a thing about art history, and the artists who are making the work don't give it the gravitas, the meaning, the context, the association to current events or other artists working in the same mediums or genres. That stuff is attached to artists oftentimes once they're famous or after their death. So the idea that artists sit around and try to align themselves with these things, I think is incredibly pompous. And don't get me wrong, I'm pompous. I am arrogant, pompous. I am very confident in my art. I believe that what I make is really strong. And to a certain extent, that is a necessary element of being an artist, because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to believe in you. So having some amount of confidence. I mean, there is arrogance and overconfidence and just bold-faced cockamamie crap, but I don't see a problem with that in your art. Now, if you're like that as a person, that's a whole different issue. But in your art and about your art, there's a thing where you have to be confident that what you're doing is the thing that you need to be doing. Like for about 3 years, maybe 2 years, I was working with white. Like all my work was white. I was doing nothing but white. And it was during the pandemic, basically. And I was doing layers of white paper, layers of white text, white. And now I'm working a lot with black. Now, that may seem very basic, but I mean, I'm doing this over top of photographs that are already colorful. So there's color in the images still. But in hindsight, looking back, I could say, oh, well, that white work was because I was sort of trying to be hopeful and optimistic during a very dark time in our society. So during the pandemic, during lockdown, I was trying to make hopeful and optimistic work with white. Now I'm doing black now, and a lot of that is because of personal matters that partly are because ramifications from COVID. I mean, I've never fully recovered from COVID as far as getting back to my pre-COVID sort of social skills and social abilities and all my social connections. Even like haven't reconnected with everybody that I was associated with pre-COVID. So, and then of course I've had some death and some life altering events going on. My parents have sort of we'll call it, started showing their age, and I'm their only child, and so I'm facing mortality. But in the reverse of that, we're about to have our first baby in about 5 weeks, so I'm also having new life coming into my life and into my family. So this is a very fluctuating time, and so it sort of begs the question of like, okay, I've got this family obligation of helping my parents with their old age. I will soon have family obligations of my own child. Why should I also devote time to making art? And I say this because I've got so many friends, like, I don't want to name names because I don't want to sort of point them out, but like I've got a friend who's a very talented artist, like insanely talented artist, and he has been a preparator for many years. So he puts together exhibitions and hangs exhibitions and stuff like this, but he doesn't really make a lot of work anymore. And part of it is because of the system itself, like the arts industry, the arts market, the arts, I don't know, any system you want to talk about, the gallery system, the sales system, the auction system, all of it. It's very confusing and difficult because there's so many of them. So like when you make art, you could be part of any of those systems. So it's very different because like as a I don't even know what a normal job is. I'm like, as a normal job, as an engineer, like you go to engineering and then you say, oh, I'm going to go into urban planning. Great. They're very distinct jobs that you then apply for, and the urban planning engineering jobs, done. That's your career. Whereas in the arts, it's very much like, I make this work that could fit in a gallery. I make this work that could fit online sales. I can make prints of it. I make this work that's more institutional. And so we are constantly juggling with recontextualizing ourselves. So like I have to write whole different artist statements. I have to create whole different sort of text-based applications, whether I'm applying for a grant, a residency, a institutional exhibition, or whatever. Like when you're writing for a grant, oh God, I've always hated writing for grants and residencies for that matter, because you're obligated to write a thing saying, when I receive money from you, or when I come to your location, I'm going to make work like this. Well, I don't even know what I'm going to make work like tomorrow. So the idea that 6 months to a year from now, when I come to an an opportunity, that I can make the thing I wrote about making is ridiculous. And even if I sat down and said, oh, I'm really inspired by this thing that is at your location, and then I get to that location and I am completely uninspired by that thing. So it's not, I find that to be very, very difficult to do because I don't think like that. And I don't think most of us do. And that's why we end up seeing like the same people doing the same things, and we see the same people getting certain opportunities because their artists are different. They're made differently. Like I've got this friend of mine that I went to grad school with who is an excellent grant writer and residency applier And the work that they make it's good. I like it. I would have it in my home, but it's not groundbreaking. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here like judging my friend based on like I think my work is so spectacular. Under no circumstances am I that pompous and arrogant. I think I make strong work. And so therefore I'm a cheerleader for my work. But I don't think it's like changing the world kind of work. But that's such a abstract, way too high expectation for making of artworks. I mean, you look at the works of Ai Weiwei, and I mean, like at a time they were incredibly evocative and like meaningful, and like now it's like, yeah, okay, okay, another Ai Weiwei, like there is a certain extent of like every artist sort of has their time, their thing that makes them unique and interesting and special. But going back to the point of why I make my work, I can't put my finger on why I make it. Probably when I was a kid, I got a lot of praise for my creativity. And so that I sort of rode on that. I mean, the honest truth, oh, this is so bad if I say this, but so the honest truth is I was going to Elon College in North Carolina, and I got kicked out of that school, but not just kicked out of the school. I got kicked out of the school. I got kicked out of the county. I got kicked out of the fraternity that I was in. I got they really wanted me gone. So I left the Elon and I went to the University of Iowa with the intention of being a Native American Studies major. That was the reason why I applied to the University of Iowa, because I had been studying with a Cherokee shaman, and I thought it was a very interesting and engaging and fascinating line of education. And so I moved all the way to Iowa to get an education in Native American Studies, and I was a junior at this point, so I had gone through 2 years at Elon. And I said, okay, great. So I get there, sit down with my advisor in Iowa, and I say, yes, I'd like to be a Native American Studies major. And they say, oh, well, that's a new major. You're going to have to start over as a freshman. And I was like, I can't do that. I don't have enough money to do 4 more years of education. I have to just finish off the last 2 years. They said, well, then you're going to have to choose another major. And I was like, fine, fuck it. I'll be an artist. There you go. That's how I chose the arts. And that's what started my path. So it's like a lot of times, a lot of us, we have the best of intentions, and we try things, and we do things because we think they're right. We want this to work, and it doesn't work, and so we fall back on some things. A lot of non-creative people would be like, oh my gosh, I wish I was creative. And a lot of creative people go, God, I wish I could work a normal job. Like, I could not work a normal, banal office job to save my life. I mean, I've tried. I worked in a stock photography agency, and not only in the stock photography, but like in the back room where I didn't even interact with clients, and I still hated it. Like they had dress codes, they had all kinds of things that it was just like, why? Like the amount of rules and regulations put on people by society and by corporations and all this stuff is just sort of spirit crushing, because you want to be an individual, but then you sort of join a thing, and then you have to fit into that thing, and it's hard. It's really hard to do well. I can't do it. It's not really in my nature. I will always push limits of things. At this point, I'm probably pushing more limits I think I've mellowed in my old age, but I still think I'm pushing limits. But I think I'm, instead of like actively pushing limits on the outside world, I think I'm pushing more limits on myself. What I'm willing to accept. For decades, I was a photographer. So I took pictures, I printed them in the darkroom, and I printed them in digital output, and I had stacks and stacks of prints that I treated like precious little children, and they only saw the light of day once they were framed and ready to be presented and all this. And so there's that aspect of my history. Now, these days, I have absolutely no sense of preciousness about my work. I will destroy my work. I will evolve my work. And a lot of the work that I'm doing now at 51, am I 51 or 50? I'm 51 now. So I'm 51 years old. I'm sort of revisiting and rethinking, but evolving with. This is the words that I like to use. I like to think that I'm transcending the original images. So I have these original images, and now I want to have them have a different impact and a different meaning, and I want them to be about something more than the original photograph. And this is where I think photography, which I sort of have said, I mean, I teach it on a regular basis, and I've sort of set it aside for myself. I don't do it as much as, well, I don't do it very much at all, actually. I don't even own a camera anymore. But that's partly more of a financial choice. Like, there's no reason to own a digital camera in this day and age, mostly because most of the quality ones, the mirrorless, all these kinds of things, they're so damn expensive for no particular reason, and you have to constantly be updating them. And if I'm not making money back from owning this thing, it's a very expensive investment. I mean, I bought cheaper cars than some of the digital cameras out in the world right now. So I'm just not interested in doing that. And as I said, I'm more interested in sort of taking a new perspective on the photograph. So I still use my photographs, and I still work with my photographs. I use them as the foundation of the work. And then I want to put more of an emotional impact into the work. And it's hard. I keep going back to this. Like, it's difficult. It's hard. It is, because you're as an artist, I am putting my heart and soul, and I'm working really hard. I'm trying to, not only am I trying to find that way to express that thing that I want to express through my work, but then there's the additional thing. It's like when a company comes up with a product, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing product in the world. Now, what's the hardest part of this amazing new groundbreaking product? It's getting it to market. So trying to convince the world that they need this product in some way. So it's marketing. So making something amazing only gets you so far, but then you have to actually get it out to the world, and then in some way or another convince them that they need this thing in their life. And that's what marketing and social media and having exhibitions and doing residencies and all that's what that is. That's the job that we do, to basically take this product that we have created, this object, this performance, it could be any sort of art form, and then we need to get it in front of the viewing public, the listening public, the whatever, to convince them that they need this thing in their life. And that is, in many ways, that's the role of a marketer, a salesperson, all this kind of stuff. And I'm excellent at that. I am a great salesperson for other people's products. It's like I was a clientele specialist in the women's department at Banana Republics, which means basically personal shopper. The person that, like, I would take down my clients' measurements, and basically when we got something new that sort of fit into what they'd already bought previously, I would actually literally give them a call and be like, hi there, we got this new thing that I think would go well with this other thing you bought 6 months ago. Like, you just keep track of all these people. And I was in one particular year, I was the top salesperson in the corporation worldwide. So that's Banana Republic as an international corporation. I was the top salesperson in the corporation. So I did that because I believed in that product at that time. And this is the thing. Like at the time, they had this amazing thing, which was anything you bought from Banana Republic had a lifetime warranty. So if a zipper broke, a button fell off, or whatever happened to any article of clothing you ever bought at Banana Republic, you could always bring it back to Banana Republic and they would repair it or replace it, period. And that was amazing. So I was more than enthusiastic to stand behind that amazing sort of craftsmanship, but then also guarantee behind the craftsmanship. Whereas now they have a 90-day guarantee. So I could never work for them anymore because I don't believe in their product. And this is one of those hard things of like, I can sell things that I have a strong belief in, and my art I have a strong belief in, but I also have a strong sense of self-consciousness when I'm out, because anytime I talk about my work and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, I feel judged and criticized because either I'm dumbing it down too much or I'm being overly pompous and arrogant. And it's trying to find that right balance of explaining why my work is worth somebody paying money for, and then why it's worth them wanting to own it and have it in their home or in their collection or in their whatever. It's a really hard struggle of when there's a self-consciousness in there. So it's my product, it's my creation, my choices, so like whatever's in that work I chose to put in there or not put in there. And so that sort of position of judge of my choices are being judged and criticized versus selling somebody else's product, where if you don't like the product, that's fine. I don't care. I didn't make it. I'm just trying to sell it. So like, if you don't like it, I take no offense to it. And that's hard. So why do I make it? Why do I continue? Well, I guess some big question is like, why do I continue to make it? So like, if I'm not being a professional artist, as majority of us are not, my intention when I went into the arts was to be a full-time teacher, which would then basically give me a full-time income, insurance in America, and all the other benefits that come along with that, so that on my free time, I would have the time, money, and space to make my art. That was always my plan. Unfortunately, those plans went to shit. So I'm not a full-time teacher. So I have to find other streams of income. And this is, basically I'm playing catch up, because other artists of my age group that were practicing artists their entire life, they have been keeping up with the how to do this, the doing the grants, the doing the residencies, the having the exhibitions, all that. I was teaching. So I was sort of in a little ivory tower, and now I'm playing catch up, trying to get back into these things that everybody else has been doing for decades. And I'm kind of having fun with it. What I've come to is I want to make it so that the practice of making the videos for this channel and making these audio clips that I'm making right now are extensions. Like they don't, basically it's going to sound lazy of me, but like they don't feel like work. Like I want to talk about these things. It's basically like a form of therapy for me. Like I want to get these things out of my head. I want to talk about these topics that are in my head. So like I want to talk about these things. So I'm happy to do like a sit down for like half hour, 45 minutes. And literally as I'm talking it out, I'm thinking it through and I'm like, oh, okay. And usually when I'm done with one of these episodes, at the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better having thought through that. So I enjoy doing that. And then of course the videos, I just video me in the studio. And so basically I'm trying to make my access into these formats, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, sort of the lowest, the easiest, least barriers of entry, basically. So I can make these recordings pretty easily. I don't have to rely on scheduling with any other people like I did with the podcast. I don't have to deal with any technological problems like I did with the podcast. I don't have a schedule or a deadline. I don't answer to a grant like I did with the podcast. So this is basically like a pared down version of the podcast where it's just me instead of other people, but I can do it more regularly. I can be more flexible with this. I can respond to people's interests, actually. So like if you have any topic that you are wondering about or have some perspective on that maybe it could be interesting, I'm interested to hear. So feel free to give us some comments and tell me sort of what are you going through? What are some things that maybe I should be thinking about that I'm not thinking about? Because I'm sure I'm not thinking about everything. I'm sure I'm overthinking too many things, but I'm not thinking about everything. But in the end, I'm trying to make work that I'm proud of. My goal here, here's my pompous, arrogant goals. I hope that probably upon my death, or soon after my death, or maybe even 100 years after my death, but I hope that at some point, some aspect of the things I made, went through, created, whatever it is, end up in the canon of art history. I know that sounds really quite pompous and arrogant, but which it probably is. But that's my goal. That's what I want. Will it get there? No idea. It's really going to be ended up to like my child and my family, probably, to put my estate in a good place and manage my inventory after I die, kind of thing, probably more than what I can do. But it's one of those things that, like, I have to have the faith, I have to have the belief, I have to have the desire to do this. I mean, my short-term goal is I actually want to get a piece in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Like that's another. Don't get me wrong, I'll take in Bilbao, Spain. That's fine. I'm accepting of that. We'll call it like a major institution. So it would be, Tate would be fine. Tate Modern. I would definitely appreciate that. But I just don't want to do the hustle. And so going back to like what I'm doing with these videos is I'm trying to find a way to involve you, basically, like involve or give people insights, give people understandings into who I am, why I'm making this work, and also hopefully get some perspective on yourself. Like maybe my struggles are the same as your struggles, or maybe you have gotten through something that I'm still struggling with, and maybe you have some helpful hints and tips on how I can get through things, or vice versa. Maybe I have some for you. I don't know. But the point being is that trying to use this as an extension of my work is what I'm trying to do these days. And so rather than making brand new work, changing my style, altering my work to be Instagram friendly and all this kind of stuff, I'm trying to create complementary additional things that are easily integrated into my life, that tick the box for the getting my work out into the world, marketing it to the world, all this kind of stuff, and trying to find the market for my product, which is such a sad way to phrase art creation, but in the end, I mean, the creation of art is the act of the inspiration. Once you start creating an object, you're creating a product in the end, because once it's completed, you have a painting, let's say, or a sculpture or whatever that is sitting in a studio. It is literally just a product, and that's a product you can gift, you can sell, you can loan, you can do anything you want with it, but it is a product, it is a tangible representation of the effort, the concept, the planning, all the different characteristics that you put into making your works. I was going to say concept again, but I already said concept. But it's a tangible representation, and that's, like my wife is a minimalist, so she hates all the stuff that I have, that I enjoy having around me in the house, and so I keep trying to express to her, like, stuff, like things, like if you go out and you travel the world, you're going to want to bring an object, something back as a tangible representation of an experience. Now, like, we went to Paris and we came back with like a little copy of a sculpture from the Louvre to put in the home. And she was like, why do we need that? Why do we need that? And I'm like, because when you look at that thing, you remember that trip to Paris. Like, so it's a tangible representation of a memory, much like when you create art, it's a tangible representation of, for me, it's a tangible representation of who I was as a person and how I was feeling at the time of that creation. So I can look back through my entire body of work going, oh, I was happy then, I was sad then, I was lonely at this time, I was not lonely at this time. I mean, there's very clear delineations if you go through my life of expressing where I was emotionally, and that's often what my work really is about. It's how I'm feeling. Some of it is, proactive. Some of it is reactive. So was I angry and reacting, or was I optimistic and proactive and creating something different? Was I copying other people, or was I coming up with original ideas? I hope I don't copy a lot. I mean, I do use inspiration from other people. No, art's not made in a vacuum. We're all influenced by other people, but I hope I don't copy. I hope I always sort of expand on, or sort of take something and elevate it in some way. But we all think we do that. That's part of the struggle of making artwork, is that we all think we're unique snowflakes, that we're special and we're somehow unique and should be treated as such. But the honest truth is we're not. So we have to fight tooth and nail to get ourselves known and seen and appreciated. So, like, while a snowflake has a limited time span, technically we have a limited time span, but we have more time that we can take these ideas and sort of rejigger them so that we can find the right place, people, market, time, whatever, for our works. I always joked when I was younger, I was like, oh, well, America's just not the place for me. I should go to Europe. Well, now I'm in Europe, and I'm like, fuck, Europe is not the, but it's not that Europe's not the place. The Czech Republic, I'm in Prague, and it is not the place for me. The market here is very insular. The collectors in the Czech Republic generally collect only Czech artists, so that makes difficult. But we will see. These days are different. The internet and the worldwide appreciation for and engagement with art is very beneficial in many ways. And so, why keep making work? To be honest, this is a question I'm probably going to come back to time and time again, this whole question of, like, why make work? I make work because it makes me feel better. Like, if I couldn't get that creative whatever's on my mind out of my head, and keep my hands busy, and problem solve, I probably would go a little crazy. Like, I love the ability to walk into the studio and have like 10 or 12 different pieces at different stages of work, and I look at it and I'm like, what does it need next? It needs something. What do I need? What does it need? And then trying to problem solve, what's the thing that this one needs as its next step. I absolutely love that. I approach much of my life in that way. So it's, teaching is more or less the same thing. I walk into a classroom and I've got 20 or 30 students in there, and the question is what do each of them need? They need something, and I have to try to figure out what each of them needs and give it to them sort of in the appropriate time when they need it. If I do something too early, then it could be as damaging as doing something too late, or for that matter, not even doing anything. And of course, then there's a whole nature of like overworking, which again is a topic for another time, because overworking versus underworking art is a struggle that I do all the time. For decades, I underworked my art, to be certain. Based on what I'm making now, I spent probably an extra 10 years of my life wanting to work more on it and scared of doing it. And I say to all of you, don't be scared, because you can always just try it again. So try it. If it doesn't work, sit it in your studio, stare at it for a couple years while trying something else, and keep trying. Because if you don't try, the answer's no. So, every time you try some new idea, technique, medium, process, whatever, there is always the possibility that you will get some amount of success. However, if you don't try it, the answer is always no.